This sewing machine looks like it's been in a smoker's house, but actually it's just been sitting in front of this window and the sun shines on it, but it is yellow. It was originally white, I promise. I had a class this morning and it was pretty small, only 3 students, so I sat down and sewed with them. This is going to be an Irish chain piece quilt. It's on my list of beginner friendlies and you get a lot of bang for your buck. It looks really difficult, but it's not. You start out with one big square that's 5.5 by 5.5 inches, and then you have 4 rectangles. Each rectangle is 3 by 5.5, and you have 4 squares. Each square is 3 by 3. You're going to start by sewing a rectangle to the top and the bottom of each one of your big squares. After you've done that, you're going to set all of that to the side. Then you're going to take your small squares and you're going to sew one small square to the top and the bottom of each rectangle. Then you're going to sew your pieces together. Pretty side to pretty side, you're going to lay the long piece that has the 3-inch square, the rectangle, and the 3-inch square on top of the piece that has the 5.5-inch square with the rectangle on the top and the bottom, and you're just going to sew down the longest side. You're going to do that for all of your blocks, and then you're going to turn them around and do it on the other side. So when you finish, you will have a 9-patch block. Across the top will be a 3-inch square, a rectangle, another 3-inch square. In the middle will be a rectangle, a 5.5-inch square, and another rectangle. And on the bottom, you'll have a 3-inch square, a rectangle, and another 3-inch square. For the size that I'm making, I need 35 of these completed 9-patch blocks. And if you get sidetracked like me and you get up to go do something and come back and forget what you're doing, then you have to create more pieces because you thought you had enough, but I didn't. So here I am. I finished these blocks. Now onto the ironing board to iron all 35. Now you'll watch me and you'll see that I don't even turn mine over and iron from the back. I just iron from the front, but I do try to make sure that the seam is laying down to one side or the other. You don't have to open your seams, and it doesn't matter which way they lay. You just want them to lay flat. In between each one of these blocks will be a solid piece. Well, not in this case. I can't let y'all see the front of this quilt because it's a Christmas present, and if I let y'all see it, it will give it away. But in between each block will be a solid piece of fabric, and that solid piece of fabric is 10 inches by 10 inches. This quilt will be 7 blocks across and 10 down. You'll start with quilt block, solid piece, quilt block, solid piece, quilt block, solid piece, quilt block. And on the next row, you'll start with solid piece, quilt block. It's really kind of like a checkerboard. You just want your blocks to be staggered. So one row starts with a quilt block, the next row starts with a solid piece until you have quilt block, solid piece, quilt block, solid piece throughout your quilt, across and down. Now each one of these quilt blocks, when you're finished, measures 10 inches. After I ironed them, I went and laid it all out on the floor so that I could make sure I liked the way the colors were spread out through the quilt. Some darks and some lights, because you see I used a whole bunch of different shades of blue. Now I purposely have my fabric turned upside down, the solid pieces, because it has something on the other side that's so stinking sweet. I cannot wait to show y'all. Now I've sewn all of my pieces into rows. I have 10 rows of 7. Now it's time to start putting the rows together to make the quilt. Because my quilt is 10 rows long, I will sew 5 rows together, and then I will sew 5 rows together, and then I will sew the 2 sets of 5 together, just so I don't have so much bulk and heaviness that I'm fighting underneath my sewing machine. Now it's off to be quilted. My name is Tammy. I'm your favorite sewing teacher, and I would love for you to come sew with me.